you want to fire it our way, to give us a call here in the studio at 440-946-9468. That's 440-946-WINT. If you don't want to talk on the air and you want to reach us off the air, you can do that as well at 877-849-0670. Or you can shoot us an email. We'd be happy to communicate with you through that and maybe bring that on the radio too. Our email address is radio@maximumvp.com. All right, Jack, so we're at the how come portion, and this is the portion for our new listeners where Jack's been pondering stuff, and he starts with the question of how come, and he'll somehow pull it back to business. So sometimes it's off on different tangents, but they're always interesting and fun. So let's see what he's got in his mind today, Jack.
Okay. Thank you, Adam. How come? All right. We just entered the presidential election cycle. The week after Labor Day, after the week after Labor Day, all kinds of stuff is going to be talked about over the next couple of months. So I have a how come question based on that little background. How come all these journalists want to see Trump's tax return? Why do they want to do that? I'm going to try to make some sense out of all this because I think it's absolutely crazy that they want to do it. Now, there's I was reading, somebody wrote into the letter to the editor here, Roberta Radcliffe, and she was saying that since 1976, all major party candidates, and I'm reading from her little letter, all the major candidates have made their returns public, usually before the convention. So that she posed the question, why is this important? Then she quotes a couple of journalists, all right, who are always hot on that topic. That's one of my favorite complaints about a lot of things, but that's one of them. So she quotes a James Stewart of the New York Times. He writes that thanks to loopholes in the tax code, it's entirely possible, even likely, that Mr. Trump pays little or no federal income tax. Okay. Then she quotes Fortune magazine, concurs, and adds, most voters don't expect to receive protection from the military and other federally funded programs for free. If Trump pays little or no tax, the tens of millions who pay income taxes are effectively paying his way. Hey, don't we need all this information to vote intelligently? And my answer is hell no. I said, and the reason I feel that way, it is really none of our business, and we won't be able to understand it anyway. I applaud Trump for not releasing it, because it's too complicated. Now let me give you an example. Let's say he paid no income taxes, and he did it within the legal boundaries of his holdings, which are vast and complicated, and he paid for the best attorneys, and he played for the system and with the system. Now, is he wrong? Now let's contrast that to he paid, I don't know, $500 million in taxes. How would you now look at him? As a pretty advanced and smart executive, or some buffoon that he couldn't pull the resources together to reduce his taxes? The point is, the journalists want that because they can pick it apart and come up with stories, and if they aren't objective, and today you can argue one way or another that the objectivity isn't there, so they're going to slant that, pull all kinds of different pieces of information, take it out of context, and all of a sudden the dialogue about what's important doesn't take place. You know, I don't care about his friggin' taxes. I find it entertaining, perhaps, one way or another, but I don't need that.
I think there's a bigger question here. This often will come up. People will talk about income versus wealth. Okay, and so they're very different. So it's not unusual for a wealthy person to have little to no income. Sure. That sounds kind of strange to people. It's kind of a local story here about some guy that I guess somehow was related to, or he's a prince over in Iran that lives here locally in the Cleveland area, and he's getting $300 a month in food stamps, which is totally legal, right? It was being discussed by different people, and so, well, how can this happen? And the topic did not come up about income versus wealth, or he may be very wealthy. He says supposedly he's worth like $110 million, right? So they said, how could this guy worth $110 million be receiving food stamps for $300 a month?
Most people don't have a clue, because most people are what we lovingly call job people. They have a job, they get a statement at the end of the year showing what they earned, and they file their taxes, and they either pay or get a refund. Well, with wealth is really the accumulation of what you own less what you owe. So you subtract what you owe from what you own, and that's your, we'll call it net worth for
So
simple.
hold on. So think about that for a second. What you own versus what you owe. Now most people don't own anything. They may own a home, quote unquote, own a home. Well, in reality, the bank really owns that home because most people have a mortgage
Because of
to
the
it,
debt,
right?
that's
It
right.
could be true for a car or for different things like that. But again, if you look at everything that you supposedly own, different assets that you have, and take out what you owe against those things, so that's where that wealth starts to become created.
It isn't really a complicated concept, but the problem is very few people have significant wealth. Thus, what Adam's saying, a lot of stuff, a lot of assets, so they don't think like that. But if you derive your, we'll call it cash flow to live on, and you derive it by selling some of those big assets or refinancing some of those big assets, you can have a very significant income without really paying much in the way of high taxes as you do with a job.
Sure, especially when it comes to real estate, right? There's a what's it called? It's not a 529 exchange. There's a certain exchange that if you sell real,
2016, 2013.
the tax code could fill many rooms. And if any CPAs out there, maybe call in and correct us on the number here. But when you sell real estate, you can always take a gain and be able to roll it over into something else without paying taxes on it. So you can continue to delay paying of taxes on things like this. To Jack's point earlier, these are all things that are very, very legal. So to now have to shift a conversation and try to explain that to people and go into tax code that makes every one of our eyeballs bleed,
boy,
right?
that's
It's
right.
crazy, right? So I think that's probably part of the reason why he's
So
not.
I applaud him for not doing that. Plus, I'd rather hear bigger issues, things like immigration, trade, war, and intrusive government, wasteful government spending. My God, for small businesses, that's absolutely horror. The education system, which is a problem, and crime. I'd rather hear those continually addressed with good hard questions and good discussions. But what we always do with the how come questions, we try to apply it to small business. Okay? Now, since Adam's been with me for so long and we've been together, we kind of know. He at least he has a sense of maybe what I'm going to say. So, and with our clients, we strongly advocate that our clients, the owners of businesses, share information about their business with their employees. In other words, they can look at a profit and loss statement, they can present this, a balance sheet. They should be open and totally transparent with their business. That's what we advocate, with one exception, and this becomes a firing offense in that company, and you tell your employees this. I'll let you know what anything that we're doing in this company is, what's going on with it, except one thing. That's the payroll. Anyone who has information on the payroll and shares it or gives it out, they're fired. There's absolutely no upside, zero upside, to share the information about payroll, because it's a highly subjective thing. People always feel they're underpaid. They're going to want more, especially if they see the guy next to them or the girl next to them basically getting more than they do. And that flows right into the Trump not releasing his income tax return. Like, there's no upside to seeing his tax return. It's just interesting entertainment, but that's not what he's there for, and that's not what we want him for.